Welcome to the Curious Conversations Collaborative with your hosts Karen Revell and Tessa and Karen. We hope by listening to these conversations you will gain insight, awareness, perspective, inspiration and motivation to create a career or business and life that lights you up and brings you happiness and joy.
Right. Hi, Karen. How are you?
Hello, I'm very well. Are you?
Good, good. Yes, I'm all getting Christmassy.
Yes, very nice.
Yeah, in our parts of the world, it's getting cold and dark soon now, isn't it?
Yes.
Already getting that time. I don't know if anyone is watching who is in warmer climates, but if you are, then good for you. But yeah, so... Right, so what are we talking about today?
Today I thought we was talking about the difference between kind of head and heart in lots of ways. It's about thinking versus feeling and about being versus doing. And even perhaps this versus either or, whether that's the right thing. So I thought we'd start off because in a session before we talked a little bit about wealth dynamics and any profiling tool, personality profiling tool, they often have different ways of getting into action or different ways of making decisions, different ways of, our energy. So one of the things in wealth dynamics was the fact that we have a thinking dynamic. And one of those, the different thinking dynamics is whether we're more introspective and coming from our sort of intuition, or whether we're more sensory and coming from or being more observant and taking information in through our senses. And this tends to be like different types of thinking. And then not so much from wealth dynamics, but from other profiling tools, we have ways of like we can make decisions of whether it's from our thinking dynamic or whether it's from feeling. And some people are more in their heads when they're making decisions, and some people need to get into their bodies or in tune with their feelings and their emotions in order to make decisions. So yeah, what do you think of that, Tessa? I mean, what do you find?
Yeah, I think, well, I think it's even in our language, right? I mean,
yes,
often
absolutely.
we say like, I think this or I feel that. Well, one interesting thing, what I really think is that for me, the sensory, whichever way the information comes to us or that we most easily observe it, in a way, it's more the filter we put on that. Like, I think it's no different. Like, some people are more auditory or more visual or all these things, right? But even then, what happens after that? When I see something, is my natural instinct to start thinking about what that means, or do I feel it more, right? So I think there is an element of what your natural, your most, where you go to response is, if you like. But I think what is happening when it starts to be an issue around this whole thing of thinking versus feeling is when we are stuck in either or in this process. Yeah, very often you hear this, like a very good example always is something around love, right? That some people will say to you, well, is that a smart choice? Hey, and you have to think rationally, do you fit together? Is it the right person? Can you build the life you want with them? Like that, like in the old days, it would be, can you provide, can you this, whatever the reasons might be, but we're looking for the rational reasons why it is or it isn't a good idea. Or on the other side, it's like follow your heart, right? And it's seen as these two different poles in a way. Whereas I think for me, what I work with people on is to really align that more, to really go so that it's not an either or, but these are two sides of the same coin. And that when they're aligned, and that doesn't mean like sometimes our heart want something that rationally we think really is not a good idea. So the alignment doesn't mean that what you think about it and what you feel is exactly the same necessarily. But when you're in alignment, you can have these both there, and together you can know whether in this case it's something to go for or not.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I know it sounds a little
Yes.
bit
And when
flaky,
you
maybe, but
and actually, when I mean, you talked about love, and actually, I can, you know, what came to mind for me. I remember many years ago being in India and talking to an elder of a village, and he was talking about arranged marriages and very much about how, you know, their rationale for it was exactly that, is that they have the knowledge, the experience, so they think about all the options of how a couple will last because they're the right fit for each other. But it's very much a thinking process, a rational, logical process, versus what we were saying was, well, surely you just want to, you know, it's whoever you feel you fall in love with. It's a very much a feeling place. So yeah, I can really see that. But it's also, I can from what you're saying, what I'm picking up is also this whole thing, especially in business or in your career, it's like this whole thing about being versus doing as well. Because I think we've got, especially in the Western world, we've got very much into thinking solutions and doing, and all of that is you know, what can be described as, you know, the more masculine energy, the yang energy. You know, it's very, you know, the sort of dominant side of things. And so and what we've kind of created as what we see as success is being like very action orientated and like I say, very thinking solutions through, being very rational and logical and sort of left brain, versus what's coming up a bit more now, especially in the entrepreneurial space, is about being, not stepping into feminine energy and taking it completely the opposite direction, but rebalancing it. So like when we want to take action, it's not just a case of going out there and doing, it is about being present as well first, and having that sort of right brain, sort of perhaps creative type of energy first, and then using the left brain sort of masculine energy, the yang energy, to kind of actually get the action going. So again, I see it's like they should be working together rather than one or the other.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, like if I look at the more spiritual side of this in the mindfulness practice and everything else, that in the end, like really they just merge. Yeah, it's not even anymore the either or, like because I think sometimes you hear this, right, in some spiritual traditions or in other places, people, or well, not so much in the traditions really, because they're actually, if you look at it, it is that whole combination, or the non-duality between the two. But what happens sometimes in the West in particular, during, it came up a lot during New Age period and stuff, where it was only then the spiritual side, right? It was like the whole body and thinking and everything was wrong. So I think then it goes the other side, you know, like, and that's why I'm saying, I think when we really feel when it's in alignment, sometimes one comes first, sometimes the other. And if you bring this to business, I think it's like this. If you think up a solution, but you're not really feeling it, or your team isn't feeling it, or whoever, then it's so hard to do, even though it's coming from the doing energy. But then it becomes a chore, and it's like this thick energy that is like, you know, it's all the time, there's resistance, because, and very often that's when you see that people don't stick to their goals or whatever, because that alignment is missing.
Yeah, and they have to push through, don't they, rather than it flowing. Yeah,
exactly. You talk a lot about flow, of course, from the world dynamics and stuff as well, right? How it is being in flow with your energy. So I think it's exactly that. But within that, in that flow, of course, planning can be handy, and we do this for all kinds of things. Like, you know, if I don't plan, then nothing goes out there. Yeah. So, but I think that the planning and the doing in that way, again, that's in alignment with the being and feeling. It's not, oh, I felt it first and now I'm doing it. It's together. And for me, like really, I work with a third element as well. Really, it's like the head, the heart, and you can't really see it, but it's the gut area.
Yes.
In Japan, they call that the hara. And in Japan, that stands for both the physical belly, the gut, but also it means the center of your being. So it's both the spiritual, the more energetic side of it, and the physical. And I think if you have those three aligned, and to me, the thinking in a way is nearly the head, but also everything between head and heart. And then the heart, of course, is feeling, but also the feeling goes down to that gut thing. We also say that in English, right? The gut feeling. It's even deeper. It's more, that's the real intuitive feeling, not just the feeling of like, oh, I like it, or oh, I don't like it, but it's that real knowing. It's a deeper knowing. So I think in Japan, they actually talk about this. You think with your belly, not your head.
Right.
And I like that. And it's not that they think you should ignore this, but it has to be in alignment with your gut feeling and head thinking. And I think they are the real, on the one hand, you could see them as opposites, but when you can align them, when you can bring them together, that's when you get that flow that you're talking about. It's that time that when you're doing your work and it doesn't feel like work. And it doesn't mean, of course, there's always elements that are tiring, and we all have to do our admin that no one, well, I don't know anyone who really likes it. But, but there's, of course, elements still there. It's not as if everything is, hunky-dory and happy and whatever. But overall, if you look at it, it's when you feel energized and passionate and drive. And, so I think that is what you want to go to. So for me, when we talk about this, about the thinking and feeling, I think for people, it's really good to have a little bit an idea, a starting point. But if you in any way have that where you're going to round and round, and where you're like, oh, should I do this or should I do that, or how will this work and what can happen, and am I on the right path? If you're in that kind of thinking, then it's really important to bring yourself back to feeling again.
Yeah.
And
but I think for a lot of people don't actually know how to do that, do they? Because I think it's an easy trap to get into, is that when we're in that state of thinking, we actually think we need to think our way out of it.
Yeah, I just
whereas
actually, say, it's like, I'm thinking too much. Let's think more about it.
Yes. Whereas actually, I always find the best thing to do in that situation, and I often recommend it to clients, is just get out and go for a walk in nature, or go out and do some exercise, or do something that brings you back. And it doesn't stop you thinking, but it gets you back out connecting with your feelings, or you become more grounded. But I know you have probably a lot more techniques around that.
Oh yeah, so like for me, like this is my work, so I help people to obviously get more in that state of, and also the more you work on the alignment of the three energies, if you like, but also really being in that space, not just doing, but being mindfulness, being present, really. The more you can then also think from that conscious present space, so then there's that alignment, the less often you get in that state of overthinking or trying to work yourself out of it, just analytically thinking. But I think before that, there is that awareness, right? Sometimes we are aware straight away. That's why I always say to people, the moment you're thinking a lot, you're aware of that. Whatever you do not in any way give out to yourself. Because the moment you're aware is your chance to do something. Because before that, you were thinking probably too. This thing when you have a train of thoughts and at some point you notice that you're drifting off in thinking? So the drifting off was already happening. That was the real unaware state. But the moment you're actually aware of that you're thinking, you should celebrate that. Because if you give out in that moment, you're already training your brain again to that be a negative of being aware of your thinking. Whereas being aware of your thinking is a good thing. Because as soon as you're aware, you have a choice. do I continue or not? Now, that might not be an easy choice because it's not that you can just stop it like that, but that's why he said, go for a walk if that works for you. And I would go even further. If it's really going on a lot, even if it was like watching some Netflix or whatever it is, that helps. If you need to, but if you do that, make sure you set a timer for half an hour or an hour, whatever your time is, to make sure that it's like temporary, that you only use that to just not go into, what do I do? What do I do? Same for anxiety. I always say to people, look, if you feel anxiety coming up, if you can bring yourself back, do that. Whether that's through meditation, going for a walk. If it's really bad, if it feels like, for instance, nearly a panic attack, then do something completely different, and it doesn't matter. And if that's watching TV or if that's reading or whatever it is, but something to really take your mind off your own thinking.
Yeah.
But that's a temporary, it's like a plaster. So after that, you need to do something else. Otherwise, you just go into that cycle and you will just continue doing this. But I would go like that far to say that can be helpful. But I think to come back to the feeling bit, it's like, because it feels so contradictory that when you need a practical, rational solution, that you need to also feel it. But again, I think I know for myself, any practical solution I've tried to think out didn't work unless I also really felt it.
Yeah. And I think, again, I mean, I know in my corporate days, there are periods where you come under, you're under a huge amount of pressure and deadlines and it's this whole thing of, we've got to work harder to get things done. And again, this is why I say it's like being in this doing energy, but sometimes actually it is that stepping back and being in the being energy of just being present and allowing things to calm down. Then the solutions kind of they just come. And I always remember you'd go to bed at night and your brain would be racing, but actually you might wake up in the middle of the night and just go, oh, that's the answer, I'll try that tomorrow, and it works out. And it's kind of like, it's just because you've started to relax and allow all the noise to calm down, and then you get that clarity and the solutions and the creativity come through.
Yeah, it's exactly that, right? Because if you would say it's like late in the night and you're still don't have your solution, and say, well, I'm just going to push through, I have to get this done, I need to do this right now, then first of all, most likely nothing is happening. And secondly, the next day you're really tired. Whereas if you actually stop and be for a moment and just be with your breath or just let it go, then something does come up. And also otherwise, at least you're fresh the next day. So you're much more likely to come to a also more rational solution, because this is the interesting thing, right? If you keep pushing through both in thinking and doing, it's mentally and physically exhausting.
Yeah.
And the more exhausted you are, the less rational and active you actually can be.
Yes.
So even from that perspective, it's so important, right? So I think it's that whole idea, and I've done this, I've made myself just keep going, but nothing comes out anymore. And it's exactly what you say. And then you let it go, you go, and either you wake up in the middle of the night or the next morning, or even maybe next week. But at some point, there it is.
Yeah.
And it's just by letting it go. So I think there's these things of the more we have to do, the more there is to do, we feel.
Yeah.
The more important it is to build in breaks.
Yes.
And rest.
Yeah.
And it's like, even I think it's the Dalai Lama, I'm not 100% sure who said, like, there's a quote going around anyway always, that says like, you should meditate for 20 minutes a day unless you're really busy, then you should meditate for an hour.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's just like, well, no, I don't have an hour, but it is, but again, it's this idea, like, and of course, like, I mean, I actually don't think you necessarily need to do specific meditation for 20 minutes, but it's that idea of, the more busy we are, the more we think we need to do, the more important it is to actually slow down and build in breaks, because that actually also makes the mind more clear.
Yes.
And we do that by being more present in the body and feel it as well.
So how would you recommend people get that greater presence in the body?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think I do think meditation really works. And meditation, again, doesn't have to be sitting still for 20 minutes, half an hour. It really can just be a few breaths. It can be that simple. It's often people think meditation means, oh, I need to sit somewhere with quiet music and do my home. It doesn't. It's your breath. It's really just about bringing the mind, not let the mind go, but bring the mind really within your body to have that alignment. So, well, maybe if you want, we have a few minutes left, so we could do maybe 1 or 2 minutes just to finish off the session. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm up for it.
Cool. Okay, so right, if anyone is watching this right now, if you just wanted to make sure, if you're obviously not driving or anything like that, if you are driving, do not close your eyes. You can still do the breathing if you like, because obviously, and otherwise you can always, it's very short, so you might even remember what I told you to do, so you can do it for yourself, or you can just rewatch it later. But if you are in a position to do so, maybe just make sure you kind of sit comfortable, preferably with your back straight, so it's easy for you to breathe. And just put your feet flat on the floor and just gently close your eyes. And then just for a few moments, just observe your breathing. No need to change anything. And just notice the breaths. Noticing whether it's fast or slow, deep or shallow. And really bring your whole awareness to your breathing. Notice on the in-breath, the air flowing into the nose and through your body into the belly. On the in-breath, feel the chest rising, the belly expanding. And on the out-breath, the belly contracting, chest falling. Now really notice on the in-breath, feel the in-breath, feel the breath flowing into your belly and allow your mind to follow the breath. Bring your awareness down into your belly, into your body. If any thoughts arise or there's any distractions, just notice them. Acknowledging them and then letting them go. And gently bringing your awareness back to your breathing. And then in this space, if there's any issue that you may have been worrying about or thinking about, see if you can, in this space with your awareness in your belly, the mind following the breath. If you're in this space, just can you bring this issue into your awareness, not by thinking about it, but just observing it, allowing it to be there. And just allowing yourself to see whatever comes up for you. See if you can sense any bodily sensations or any emotions or even thoughts that arise from this issue, from just sitting in this space. And just observe whatever is coming up without labeling it or judging it or trying to do anything with it. Just allowing it to be there. Just being aware of what comes up. And just take another deep breath in. Slowly breathing out. In your own time. Bring yourself back into the room and open your eyes. And if any insights or anything else come up, you might want to write them down for yourself if it's something. And just for yourself to know, like, this was obviously very short. Very often if people are struggling with specific issues or overthinking a lot, then this can be a way to kind of gently bring yourself, in contact as well with your feeling and your gut feeling as well. And sometimes there can be a real knowing that's not just the analytical knowing, but it can be linked to that more intuitive knowing as well. So sometimes insights can come up, and sometimes you might need to repeat this a few times or do it a little bit longer. So, but it's just to kind of give you a taster of what that might be doing for you. How was that for you, Karen?
Very relaxing and very calming. And I think, like you say, that's it. It's that whole piece of we get up into our heads and things feels like they're racing like a million miles a minute, and it can just bring you back down and slow things down and and re-energize you. So great.
Yeah, cool. Right. So just for people to say this, you have your breath with you all the time, and you can do this anywhere. I recommend a lot, always my clients, I recommend them a lot to, if you're busy in work, whether that's in a company or your own work, and you find it difficult to make time for this, just make it a habit for yourself to build in these moments of just breathing and just coming back into your body. You can even place your hands on your belly if that helps you focus on the breathing into the belly. And you can do this anywhere. You can do this, on your toilet break if you find it difficult to make time for it. It's always a good place. I think no one around generally. and you can just take, even if it's just 2 or 3 breaths, right? It doesn't have to be a full meditation. You don't have to remember any of this. Just for a moment to get out of the head, or not even out of the head, but to bring that alignment with head and gut there as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Tessa.
Right. So I don't know. Yeah, I think that was all I had to say about it really for today. I mean, I can say a lot more about it, but then we would be talking for a few hours. So maybe
no, I think we should wrap it up there. That's a good place to leave it.
Yeah. So thank you for that lovely session. It was nice for me anyway to do as well.
Yeah, and, likewise.
If anyone has any questions about what we did or what we discussed, please leave it in the comments below. If you're watching this on Facebook or LinkedIn or anywhere, or you can just connect with us as well. The contact details are floating around on the different places where we post our conversation. So feel free to contact us if you like. And we will think up something else nice to talk about next time.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
That's great. Yeah. Speak again soon.
See you soon. Bye. Bye.
Bye.